Welcome to My Writer's Room. I'm BT Higgins. All right, welcome to lesson 4.4. We're going to talk about a great writer, classic 2 novels he wrote, which is actually a little bit rare. Usually the people who write great books have written like a ton of them. The last couple of authors that I've highlighted had written like over 100. Well, this guy only wrote 2. His name is Wilson Rawls, and he wrote Where the Red Fern Grows in 1961, which is considered a classic. Classic just means really good but old. It's one of those really good classics. I remember when I read it. I remember where I was when I read the ending of it. Now, the ending of it is really powerful. It's a really interesting story, basically about a boy who lives out in the country and wants to get a couple of, wants to hunt raccoons, and he has to get a couple of dogs, bloodhounds, I think is what the term is. I haven't read it for a while, but he needs to get a couple of bloodhounds, and he's got no money, and so he saves up his money to try and get a couple of mail order catalog dogs, and it's his whole adventure of getting the dogs, training the dogs, and then hunting raccoons out in the countryside, and it's really good. I mean, it's a whole piece of the world and the whole time that I'm not a part of. So it was interesting in that space, but it also is just so interesting, the bond and the love that he has for his dogs and what he'll do for them and what they do for him, what he does for them and what they do for him is really, it's just an awesome story, Where the Red Fern Grows. And so that's Wilson Rawls' big novel for which he's famous. And so you want to give that one a shot. He didn't write another one until 1976. So 61 all the way to 76, he didn't write another book until he wrote The Summer of the Monkeys. And I didn't know about this one for like 10 years. I had read Where the Red Fern Grows, and then I discovered Summer of the Monkeys and said, by Wilson Rawls. Wait a minute, Wilson Rawls. Isn't that the guy who wrote Where the Red Fern Grows? And keep in mind, all of this is way past after he had even died, I think, when I was reading this. And so I picked up Summer of the Monkeys just based on the fact that it was from the same author who wrote The Red Fern Grows. And this one's another fun one, boy in the woods kind of thing, which you might notice I like those kinds of books. I have a lot of out in the woods and nature type stories that I really love and that I recommend. It's kind of my thing, I guess. Summer of the Monkeys is a fun one where he discovers a whole bunch of monkeys living in the forest right by his house. Now, monkeys aren't native to that area. I think if I remember, they kind of escaped from like a zoo train or a circus train or something. There's a whole big adventure about it, and I really thought it was great. I wish that he had written a bunch of stuff. I wish that he had a catalog of 30 books that I could then go from the big famous ones to all of his other ones and just spend a lot of time enjoying his style, because he writes really good stuff. But he just wrote 2. Now, I'm not really sure why. I don't know a lot about his story or why he only wrote a few. I see that in his bio that he's did a lot of jobs in a lot of areas, including going up to Alaska as a carpenter. But he wrote lots of manuscripts, but it seems to be that they just kind of got stuffed in a trunk and never published. Maybe they weren't super awesome, and so he didn't want to publish them, or maybe he was doing other things. I did notice that he got put in prison twice in Oklahoma in 1940 and New Mexico. For breaking and entering. And so he's kind of maybe a rougher guy. But then he worked construction and he did all kinds of stuff. But then somewhere in there he wrote. And I mean, Where the Red Fern Grows is so famous, I assume that it made him a bunch of money. So maybe he could become a professional writer there. I don't know why he didn't write more. But some writers are like that. It's almost like they give birth to one work of art that's really amazing, and they just don't do more. Maybe there's a reason why that I don't get, but I really wish that those people who are so good would keep writing more, and usually they do, but not Wilson Rawls. Just 2 books. Now, he did have an interesting quote that I found from him that really fits in with the writer's room. It's kind of advice. So let me go ahead and read that, and then we'll call that good for Wilson Rawls. I hope you read Where the Red Fern Grows or The Summer of the Monkeys. I think you'll enjoy it. But so we'll end with this quote from Wilson Rawls. Children are always asking me what advice I can give them on trying to be a writer. I always tell them to do a lot of reading. Read and study creative writing. Then start writing and keep writing, and then they can be a writer too. Someday they will make it if they don't give up. Good advice. A writer needs to start by being a reader. Read, 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 and study creative writing, which is what we're doing here. And then write. Write a little every day, and don't stop writing. Just follow the fun all the way to mastery. And eventually, if you want to be a professional writer, you can get to that point. But just writing every day means you are a writer. And so you'll have the fun of it and the satisfaction of knowing you're doing something that most people just dream about doing. They have the idea, oh, wouldn't it be cool to write a novel? Well, you're going to be the one doing it, and you're going to be having fun doing it, and you're going to get good if you just keep writing. Maybe someday you'll write a classic.